Here we are with the iPhone 12 Pro and its triple camera system. So these are all top of the line cameras, but you probably already knew that. And honestly, I could probably have just ended it there. Like, you know, you're getting good, consistent point and shoot photos, high quality videos, and a good mic. You're set. But that's not what you came here for, is it? So there's a lot more to say about these cameras. So first of all, the iPhone's cameras haven't really changed all that much since they started getting really good a few years ago. If it ain't broke, they definitely don't fix it here, which is funny because the headphone jacks also weren't broken, but I guess they didn't feel the same way about that. But the point is, there's not going to be some huge year-over-year difference with the iPhone cameras because they don't have much to change. The sensor size is going to stay about the same. It's a 12 megapixel optically stabilized sensor. This one has an f1.6 aperture, letting in plenty of light, and it's flanked by a 120 degree 12 megapixel ultra wide at f2.4 and a 2.5x optical telephoto at f2.0, a LiDAR scanner, a mic, and a flash to finish off that stovetop. The thing about the iPhone is dead simple, and it has been forever. Everyone knows how to point and shoot, tap to focus if you really need to, and if you need any extra controls, they're typically hidden away, maybe one swipe and a tap away. And when you point and shoot, the software does a lot of heavy lifting thanks to Smart HDR, thanks to multiple exposures, thanks to computational photography, and thanks to a great image signal processor that makes it all happen very quickly. It would be really hard to get the results that the iPhone gets from any other camera system with just plain point and shoot. And that is what the iPhone is so good at. So I give it all the credit in the world for point and shoot.
And see what options we have. So you've got different things for scene detection, of course, Smart HDR, we'll turn on grid. And then of course, like I said, recording video, you can go up to 4K 60. HDR video here is an option, so record up to 30 frames per second in 10-bit high dynamic range, including Dolby Vision. So we'll test that at the end of the video. I'll record with this camera in HDR and see what it's like. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the camera, and you can see there's the rear camera, photo mode. We'll go into the other options so we can adjust exposure and things like that, just like some of the newer iOS 14 features. But let's go back, and we'll go back to video. So let's just record a quick video. So I'll hit record, and you can see here's the quality out of the video camera. This is the rear camera. You can see there's the iPhone 12 Pro back there. And in general, it looks pretty good on this display. Nice and vibrant, nice and bright. And then let's go back to photo. We'll take a photo here. You'll see it darkens considerably. And if we zoom in, it's pretty sharp. The quality looks pretty good. So it'll be pretty interesting to try this out a little bit more extensively. And then also let's spin around the forward-facing camera. And of course, this is the forward-facing camera. So we'll hit record here. We're in 4K 30, and now we're recording with the forward-facing camera of the iPhone 12. And so I wouldn't really expect too much of a difference other than with the neural engine helping out a little bit. But let me know what video you like best in the comments below. Now also,
2.5 times optical zoom instead of the 2 times you get on every other Pro iPhone. Although the difference that this makes, I've got to say, is subtle. It basically means that you can get to about 12 times zoom with the same quality as you used to be able to get to 10 times with. We've also got sensor shift stabilization, otherwise known as in-body stabilization. So usually the way it works with cameras is that the lens has the ability to move slightly, to kind of counteract the shake of your hands. This takes that a step further and moves the camera sensor itself. Although, it is kind of a weird feature to have on a phone, because the main benefit of this on cameras is that it allows you to swap lenses freely and still keep your stabilization. But obviously being a phone, you're not going to be swapping lenses very often. So it leads to 3 perks, but they're all quite subtle. One is just the fact that it kind of helps to counteract the fact that there is a bigger, heavier sensor on this phone than all other iPhones. 2, it's slightly better at also adjusting for jittering. So if you're filming while sitting in a car, for example, that gentle rumbling motion seems to be a bit less noticeable here. And the third thing is that because your lens is now locked in place, and it's just this
camera lens and the camera sensor, you can see that the camera lens floats over the top of the sensor, like a hoverboard from Back to the Future. The top lens is wiggling to compensate for and stabilize the shakes that happen to the phone while you're taking a picture or video. This type of OIS can stabilize at about 1,000 times a second, which is impressive, but not quite as impressive as what's inside of the Max. Taking a look at both camera housings, we can see that the iPhone 12 Pro Max is indeed quite a bit larger than the iPhone 12 Pro. Optical image stabilization has been a big deal for flagship smartphones for the past few years. However, professional, real-size cameras like this GH5 sometimes have a type of stabilization that is called sensor shift, It's an internal stabilization method that moves the sensor itself to stabilize the image instead of moving the exterior lens. It's much faster, since it happens right at the picture collection point, the sensor. This technology has only been found in DSLRs. Until black metal is off, we get our first look at the bottom side of the camera sensor, and it is indeed shifting, moving around inside of the housing, while the exterior lens stays in the same spot. It looks like Apple has indeed done it. They've done something new. I'll pop the camera lens off so we can see how it works. Apple says that instead of the normal 1000 adjustments per second that we see with regular OIS, this new sensor shift method can stabilize up to 5000 times per second, which is a pretty big deal and means we get quite a bit more accuracy. The camera lens portion of the housing has several large magnets, and when I say large I mean the size of an ant, but still proportional to the camera it's pretty big. These magnets sit on top of tiny coils that can ever so slightly shift the position of that sensor. The sensor shifts around inside of its housing just like we saw in the professional camera, and at 5000 times a second it happens pretty fast. Of course the sensor of the Max is a tiny bit larger than the iPhone 12 Pro, which we can see now that they are side by side. This means that the larger sensor on the Max can absorb a tiny bit more light, which is a good thing. The pixel size themselves are also 0.3 micrometers larger on the Max than they are the regular. I'll let other reviewers be the judge of the actual camera image quality, but if you want the best of the subtle camera improvements, the iPhone 12 Pro Max is where Apple has put everything they've got.
Separates itself is delivering consistent photos in the review, and every year it's pretty similar. They've got this crunchy processed look, but not too over sharpened or over processed, plenty of dynamic range and detail for such a small file. And the iPhone is notorious for flattening out pictures with faces, making sure it always brightens up any faces that might be in the shadows or not exposed too well. It will always sacrifice the rest of the image if it has to, in favor of the subject, or the face, which most would argue is the smart thing to do in full auto. But when you spend
benefits. 1. Slightly more detail. The fact that it can process more light now means it can gather just a bit more information. 2. The extra light you're getting makes more and more of a difference the darker you get. And so as you get to nighttime, it is the difference between, that photo's looking a bit rough, to, yeah, actually, it's kind of comfortable. It can also shoot those night mode shots a little faster. In an environment where the iPhone 12 Pro might need to be held still for 10 seconds, this phone might be able to do it in 3. And then before, it's got even better dynamic range. So here, for example, if you look at the really bright area inside the light bulb, the 12 Pro Max can control the highlights a bit better than the 12 Pro can. And finally, most importantly for me, is improved depth of field. So you can take photos without using portrait mode and still get this lovely separation of foreground and background. I think within 10 minutes of using this camera, I decided, okay, we've got
videos. This is all the in-depth info on the new cameras, plus the differences I found between the 12 Pro and the 12 Pro Max with the larger sensor, better stabilization, and improved zoom. Yes, I did make a video about all those things, but bottom line here is it isn't much of a difference in most shots until you get to the edge cases, which is where that stuff can produce less noisy photos on the Max. Also, you remember Dolby Vision? About how there is this huge deal made about the fact that the iPhone 12 series is the first set of Dolby Vision certified cameras, and suddenly it was about to become a huge deal and everyone would start shooting HDR all the time. Well, that hasn't really played out yet. Don't get me wrong, the video files look great. Dolby Vision HDR video from an iPhone looks amazing on an iPhone, and if you send it to other iPhones, it'll look phenomenal on those displays, but the second you have to export it and send it somewhere else, that's where the experience starts to fall apart. iPhone's Dolby Vision video is using HLG, which stands for Hybrid Log Gamma, and without getting super into the weeds on file formats and nits, it's just not compatible everywhere. So if I shoot a Dolby Vision HDR video on my iPhone and I want to share it somewhere like Twitter, Instagram, or even an Apple TV where it's not supported, well then the video gets converted and mapped to an SDR image, fitting all of that HDR information back into a standard dynamic range screen, and to me that SDR image doesn't look great. So Dolby Vision HDR video looks super good when it works, and I've seen some awesome examples even on YouTube of iPhone 12 Pro HDR videos, and if you have the right monitor or the right phone, then these videos look awesome. But I'm still waiting for the best, most reliable HDR pipeline for getting a video shot here